In Sussex, I'm Kit Bradshaw and welcome to Candidate Question Time, an extra special live show from UniTV. Tonight you'll be able to hear from the 22 candidates vying to represent you and lead the Students' Union as your next team of full-time elected officers. For the 6 that win, they'll take a year out of their studies or stay on for a year after their graduation to work full-time for the Students' Union. And who wins is up to you. The 13,000 students at Sussex and BSMS will be voting all next week for their preferred candidates. Voting opens at Monday at 9 a.m. and closes on Friday at 5 p.m. And you can vote all week online at sussexstudent.com/vote. Tonight we'll be hearing from the candidates for Communications Officer, Operations Officer, Education Officer, Activities Officer, Welfare Officer, and of course Students' Union President. We've had lots of questions from you, the students, and we'll be putting a few of them to the candidates tonight. Some of the candidates aren't able to join us tonight, but you can read their manifestos and all the candidates here online on the Students' Union website, sussexstudent.com/elections. And we're broadcasting live to East Slope Bar, Falmer Bar and across the world online, and you can join in the conversation. We're using the Twitter hashtag Sussex Elections. Check out the UniTV Facebook discussion. That's facebook.com/UniTV. And we're also live blogging tonight's event. That's at sussexstudent.com/candidate question time. Okay. The questions have come in. First up are the Communications Officer candidates. Now, the Communications Officer is there to make sure all students at Sussex are informed about everything that the union's doing. They also oversee student media, the Badger newspaper, UniTV, URF and the Pulse online magazine. Let's hear from the candidates.
Hello, I'm Francesca and I'm running for Comms Officer for 3 reasons. Firstly, the people who know about the services and opportunities provided by the union are those who are normally already involved with it. I want to make the information accessible to all. I want to do this by my second point, which is by making UniTV, URF and the Pulse as prioritised as the Badger is. Everybody's heard of the Badger and I want to make sure that everybody knows, to an equal extent, what opportunities there are. And thirdly, I want to integrate academic research into student media and make the content relevant to those who are actually working here on campus and the students who put in so much effort. So thank you very much. Vote Francesca for comms.
Hi, my name is Imogen Azy and I want to be your Communications Officer. Our Students' Union and student media need better websites in order that students can access information about how the union really works, and can also be used as a place for debate and discussion about what the union could be doing and the services that they need to provide for students. We also need to take power out of committee meetings and instead give it to referendums, to discussion and debate and surveys with students rather than poorly attended meetings. And we need to provide better space for our societies and our sports teams to advertise what they're doing and the services that they provide. We can do this with a Badger wraparound each term, with 4 pages of free advertising for students and a termly showcase that shows off what Sussex does best.
Our first question tonight is to all 3 candidates vying to be the next Communications Officer at the Students' Union. So with URF, UniTV and the Pulse magazine now completely online, what does the future hold for student media at Sussex? Is it going to be completely digital? Alia, what do you think?
I think that having stuff online is great. It's really accessible and obviously it's better for the environment. But I also think that having stuff in print is quite important as well. And particularly with the Badger, it's available all around campus and people can just pick it up as they walk past. And I think that's quite important because it has a lot of sort of news about the university in it that if it was online people may not know about because they might not kind of take the time.
And do you think students still value actually the physical paper to pick up on campus?
I think so. I think it's a way of sort of making sure that you know what's going on. It's kind of a visual reminder. It's like, oh, we'll see what's going on this week. I'll pick up the Badger. If it was on a website, you may not kind of think directly to go and look. And I think it's quite nice to keep something a bit traditional as well.
Imogen, what do you think?
I think that whilst digital media is really important, because it makes it more accessible and the sort of unlimited capabilities with it, students can access it from anywhere, that our printed media is still really important. People still do pick up the Badger, and every week we give out pretty much every copy that we print. We get hardly any back, and that's a really great sign to me that print media is still really important.
Liliya mentioned the environmental impact. What do you say to that?
Well, the environmental impact, obviously you get that with any newspaper, but with all the recycling bins we have around campus, I hope that students will recycle the paper when they're done with it, and any copies that we do get back at the end of the week do get recycled. So I see that although there is an environmental impact, it's still nice, as Liliya says, to have sort of the traditional media there.
Francesca, what do you make of this debate about, moving to completely online versus traditional newspapers on campus?
I think you can't move to completely digital because it's one of those things where if everything's online, things become very hard to access. Like you have to know where to go in order to find them. And I think information needs to be accessible for all students. I think especially like the Badger's been doing very well. Everyone knows about the Badger. But UniTV, URF, like URF's been running since 1976, but it doesn't have as many followers as the Badger. And I feel like the only way to really achieve this is if we actually get it playing like out in like the bars and the cafes and the union shops, because this is where people can actually access it. Like I don't want to bombard students with the media, but I want them to actually be able to see it when they're walking along. And it's just like the Badger, you can go and pick it up whenever you're on campus. I want this to be the same for UniTV and URF because I think they need like equal priority.
Okay, so seems like a bit of agreement from the three comms officer candidates so far on what the future holds for student media if any of them are elected. Let's look a bit now at the candidates' manifestos, what they say in their manifesto and how that will differentiate them if they are elected comms officer. Francesca, staying with you, in your manifesto you say you want to achieve information for all. What do you actually mean by that?
I think the union, as good as it is, it's got so many amazing services on offer for students and so many opportunities, but I think it's actually a minority of students who actually engage with this. There are 13,000 students on campus, and I think the union should be there for all of them, and all of them should be able to integrate as and when they want to. I think the way the unions run at the moment, it's kind of the people who are engaging with it and people who know about the services are already the ones who are involved, and I want to make it so that students like right at the other end of campus, students having to go on and off each day, I want them to feel like they have just as much say in what goes on. They like know about the events. I want to make events more kind of promoted so they're earlier. And
those candidates that are hard to reach though, so some people would say they are by definition hard to reach if they're not currently engaged in the union. What's the answer? It's nice to say you want to reach them, but how would we go about it?
Well, firstly, I think doing this by it sounds nice, but it's with the online media and everything. But I think things need to actually be there in the physical world. I'd want to increase the amount of notice boards on campus and make them in more prominent places. Like you have a big notice board in Library Square, like where the campus map's gone up. So all the events that are coming up, people can see it right there. Also with student media, if UniTV and URF are also just as prominent, and in other student spaces on campus, I want to get these things put in cafes across campus as well. And obviously with privatisation, you'd have to see who to approach about this. But
so just on that point, with URF and UniTV, would that mean more funding for those outlets over the Badger? How do you see the balance there?
I want to equalise the balance. I think the Badger's doing really well, and I want this to be the same for the other two because the students put in just as much hard work, and I think that they really deserve to be given equal priority so that they're like the three main media outlets.
So if you were comms officer, it would see more funding for the other outlets other than the Badger?
Yes.
Okay, we're out of time, I'm afraid, Francesca. Imogen, in your manifesto, you say you want to make the full-time elected officers, the jobs that you're all going for, more accessible and out there. How do you balance this with the incredibly heavy workload that officers have?
Obviously, officers have an awful lot on their plate. There's a lot of different things to do that we don't necessarily see as students. One way that we can do this is allocate sort of a certain amount of time each week that they have to be out and about and talking to students, whether it's going along to a society or a sports team, going into Library Square and talking to students directly. This can also be done through digital means. We could do things like online surveys to directly gauge what students want, and officers can spend an allotted amount of time each week actually looking at student responses and student opinion.
And do you think students, the 6 officers who are up on the banner, they're in reception at Falmer House, do you think students actually care about knowing more, interacting more with those officers? Do you think that's what students want?
I think students should care if they don't care. I think a lot of the reason why students might not care is because they don't understand how the union works and how decisions are made. All of the decisions are made by our full-time officers and our part-time officers, as well as other members of the representative body that is our students' union. And I think students really need to understand what they're doing. We also need to sort of get our part-time officers out there a bit more. Our part-time officers are really important people who give up a lot of time, volunteer a lot of time, and I think a lot of people don't understand that they have a role in our union as well.
And what would you do if a fellow officer, if you were elected, turned around and said, no, I don't want to go out there. I'm best served answering emails that students are sending me with serious concerns here in the office.
Officers are elected representatives, and as an elected representative, you have a responsibility to talk to the people who have given you their vote, have given you their time. And at the end of the day, officers are paid out of students' money. This is students' money that's going into their students' union. And if the officers aren't serving people properly, there probably is a better way that we could spend this money.
So if you were elected comms officer, you'd be there getting all the other officers out. If you saw them, hidden away, you'd be getting them out the door.
I would. You should know who your officers are. You should know who is accountable to you. You should know who's doing stuff for you and what they're doing.
Okay, Imogen, we're out of time. Thanks for that. Finally, earlier, you mentioned in your manifesto that you want to use student media more as a vehicle for student rights. How would you balance this when each outlet at the moment it does have its independence and is very much independent?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. I think with certain issues that are kind of prominent within the student body that students are talking about quite a lot, like, for example, the privatisation at the moment, which the Badger has actually been really good at covering. I think sort of having a bit more information about those kind of issues that are affecting students' rights and sort of student comments or running articles about them would be the best way to I think the best way to defend students' rights is for students to actually understand how certain changes within the university will affect them. I don't necessarily see the promotion of that as kind of undermining that media's independence.
So is this a criticism of how student media are currently sort of standing up for student rights? Do you think they should be doing more? Or?
It's not necessarily a criticism, because I do think they're doing a really good job, but I do also think that they could be doing slightly more, but I don't mean that in an overly critical way, because like I said, I think the Badger in particular has been really, really good this year for that.
So as comms officer, how would you do that? Would you get the heads of the outlets round the table? Would you instruct them to do it? Would you, how would you, if they weren't doing it or you had no interest in doing it, how would you balance that, do you think?
I think it would kind of have to be a democratic process, and so it would be a meeting where everyone sort of gave their ideas and would state, why they didn't want to do certain things, and it would just be a question of, having to bring them round, because I wouldn't want to be sitting there telling other people who are also working really hard on what, they're really good at, what to do. I don't think that's a particularly effective way of winning people over or being a good leader.
Okay, Alia, thank you. Thank you to all the communications officer candidates. Good luck in your campaign. You can find out more about the candidates and read their full manifestos online, sussexstudent.com/elections. Next up, we have the candidates for Operations Officer. Now, the Operations Officer is responsible for the Students' Union's shops and bars and also our ethical and environmental policy. They also oversee the Students' Union finances and make sure all the money the union is spending is being spent in the best interests of Sussex students. So let's hear from the candidates.
Hi, I'm Lucy and I'm running for Operations Officer. If elected, I'd like to build on my experience working in the commercial services in the union by opening a union-run charity shop on campus. I'd also like to make more understandable to you as individuals how your money funds your union. I'd further like to build on the union's ethical and environmental achievements by providing more ethical banking options on campus and working to reduce waste in our commercial outlets. Vote Lucy for Operations.
Hello everyone, I'm Olaf and I'm running for Operations Officer for 3 reasons. 1 is I'm studying economics and I've run my own bar before. 2, I want to bring cheaper meals back to the university just so you can study here and not have to spend £5 every time you do. And 3, my dad is an environmentalist and he's been opening renewable energy projects around the world and I would like Sussex University to be a part of that. So please vote for me for better deals, cheaper meals and greener fields. Thank you.
Hello, my name's Emily Holliday and I'm running as Operations Officer. I want to improve ethical and environmental policy by increasing the amount of recycling and bike sheds on campus, by continuing to challenge the outsourcing and marketisation of our education,
and by reducing stress through creating pet therapy days on campus during exam periods. I also want to encourage union growth and financial growth by developing a bar in town, encouraging the co-op to accept student ID, by creating a discount loyalty card scheme across outlets.
The first question tonight is to all the operations officer candidates. So, candidates, if the university management offered the union a substantial increase in our guaranteed yearly funding in exchange for them taking over our shops and bars, what would you do? Lucy first.
Well, for me, it would have to be an absolute no. I think that, to me, the shops and the bars are the direct contact on a daily basis between all the students and the union. So it's somewhere that people get every day and they have that contact with the union. And for me, if they were to be taken away from that, there would always be no point in the union existing. Obviously, at the moment, we're having all the debates about the outsourcing. And to me, having to outsource our union commercial services would be much, much worse than that.
So for you, commercial services, shops and bars are central to what the Students' Union does?
I think so. I think they're central as well as just having that contact, that daily thing that people do, like having a coffee at Falmer or going to the shop. And they have that contact, which I just think if it was taken away, there'd be just a lack of contact between the union and students.
But what if there was so much more money up for grabs for society, sports clubs, advice? Is there a tipping point?
It would be worth it.
It's a definite no for you?
For me, it would always be a definite no.
Even if it meant so much more money to spend on those other student activities?
I just don't think, look at all the fuss that's been about the outsourcing of the university services. Imagine if they tried to do it to the union, which is even closer to people's hearts than the university services.
So it's central that on Sussex campus we remain running those services?
Yeah, because lots of other unions, they've had to outsource their commercial services, and I just don't want that to happen here.
Olaf, on this debate, what do you think? I mean, is it an outright no, or is there a point where you would say yes?
Por supuesto que no. Of course not. No way. As Lucy said, I have 3 points. First of all, we'd lose independence, which is what the union's there for. And once you lose independence, they could do anything they want with the union, so they could even outsource it, as Lucy just mentioned. Secondly, even if they didn't outsource it, they could raise the prices on anything they like. So then we have no competition, nothing to work with to try to get prices down, which is exactly what my manifesto is saying, to try to put down prices on foods and everything by competing against what the university has, and we'd be losing that. And thirdly, I truly believe that we could definitely make a better profit if we just innovate the union and just...
Because you mentioned profit there, because some people see the commercial services, the shops and bars, as just making profit for those other things the Students' Union does, funding them. But do you disagree with that? Do you see it as having a more function?
Well, I think it's a bit of both. It also shows that we get to, just promote what we want to do, as well as keeping the competition going against the university and just keeping prices down on everything. Okay, thanks Olaf. We're out of time, I'm afraid. Emily, what do you think in this debate? Is there a point when actually the benefit of the rest of the union in having the extra funding means that we would sell off our commercial services?
Well, I think democracy is essential to the union. So, and I know that not most students are against outsourcing, but there are a few who have another opinion. So I would send out option-based surveys with booklets so that students can make an informed decision. But personally, for me, I wouldn't want them outsourced because I know that the union services provide jobs for students and they provide amazing training. And also, once you enter into outsourced services under other companies, it makes it a lot harder for students to have a voice in having the way they're run changed.
What would you say to people who say, the union used to run completely run the supermarket on campus, now it's in partnership with the co-op, and that seems to be working quite well?
Yes, obviously it's staffed by the Students' Union, but the co-op is brilliant. It's done really well for its first year or so, but there are issues like some students can't see the point in there being pet food in the co-op and things like that. But that's co-op policy, and that's decided at head office. And
so it's that control that we have over the other outlets.
Exactly. You can't really change things and respond to the student voice as much as you could if, when they're run by the union. Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you for that, Emily. Now, the next questions are based on the candidates' manifestos and are to each of them individually. So,
First of all, Emily, still with you. If you were elected operations officer, you mentioned in your manifesto that you'd like to introduce pet therapy days to reduce stress during exams. Now, how do you think this fits with some people who would say, any type of use of pets in these kind of activities is not good for animal rights and they shouldn't be used in these kind of settings? What would you say to those people?
Well, the way that I would choose to implement it would be the way that it's been trialled at other universities, where you work with animal rescue services and charities and things like that, bring them onto campus for an hour or so, and you would have the pet carers there with them, so they're not going to let the animals become distressed, or if they do, then they'd remove them. So I don't think there's really any risk to animal rights because you're doing it with people who care about animals and things like that.
I mean, in the past few years, for example, the union has said no to holding events at Brighton Racecourse because it's a venue that uses animals in entertainment. But you don't think this is a problem going forward with something like a pet therapy day and the use of those animals in that setting?
No, because like I say, you're doing it with services and charities that they have the pet's best interests at heart, and bringing them onto campus, it provides an opportunity for, if students feel like donating to those charities, then there's an opportunity for the charities to benefit and the animals to benefit as well. It's not going to ever be a situation where the animals are locked into a room and,
Okay, yeah, thank you. I'm afraid we're out of time, Emily, but thanks for that. Olaf, you mentioned in your manifesto you have a few quite big and risky ideas, some people might say, like massive gigs in Mandela Hall, like when Jimi Hendrix was here, you mentioned, and also maybe a new falafel restaurant on campus. Do you think these are a bit risky, and where would the money come from?
Claro que no, not risky at all. My idea with businesses has always been that you always start with something small. So it's a small investment. The kebab's a small investment. Bringing musicians in from Brighton, which is the city with most bands per capita in the world, is a very small investment. So you always start small. You never invest a huge thing, and it's just things that you sell by quantity. And then it's just getting as many people to compete with the cheap prices, so nobody will want to have, if you were going to put a hair cutting salon, then you don't want people to go back to the city, but just try to get everything in the university, so everybody wants to buy and just do everything with the...
I mean, traditionally, these kind of big events, like any big event, it's high risk because it could mean high losses for the Students' Union. If the tickets don't come off, if the acts, it doesn't happen. So do you not see that there might be a risk in those kind of putting on those kind of events?
No, because I wouldn't take risks. You start with something very small. I mean, a kebab stand wouldn't cost you more than £1,000. The concerts I'd organize for free at first. Anything else, it's always starting small, and that's what I'm going to do with my life as well. I always start small, and then we'll work it up.
I mean, the union with the commercial services in the past few years has tried new ventures. It set up the Students' Letting Agency, considering a bar in town this year.
That's crazy.
You think that's crazy?
Well,
so why is that different?
Risk.
Why is that different from opening
because
a new falafel restaurant, for example?
To open a bar in town is going to cost you monthly a certain price. To open a falafel, if it goes bad, you'd lost £1,000.
So if you were operations officer, you'd can that project, a bar in town, that would be off the cards for you?
I'd have to look at the numbers first, but depends on what they're offering us.
And limited risk in the ventures you're thinking about, so you wouldn't put Students' Union funding at risk in setting up these new ventures?
Never.
You'd always look at the fund?
And I'd deal with the students and I'd show what my plan is, and I'm sure everybody would be agreeing that there is no risk.
Okay, Olaf, thank you. We're out of time with you, I'm afraid. Lucy, one of your big ideas in your manifesto is to set up a charity shop on campus for students. How would this work with the current free shop that the Students' Union runs, where students can donate products and get them for free? Would it get rid of that, or would it be run alongside that?
I think for me it will definitely run alongside. I think the free shop is brilliant. I mean, during Freshers Week it did a really good thing in providing people with things like saucepans for free. I just feel there's a place for something that almost to me it's a quality issue, so something with a bit higher quality and something to sort of go against all the charity shops in town which are very expensive, or things being labelled vintage and therefore sold at a ridiculous price. People love second-hand cheap things, and for me this would just be somewhere for people to bring things when they're moving out or having a clear out. And I'm not talking masses of profit, just small amounts, which could be run along with the free shop. I don't think that I'm looking to oust that at all. But obviously at the moment it's not staffed in any way really on a daily basis. So it just kind of does get left in the corner of the common room. So we'll be looking to run in conjunction with it.
Would that mean the free shop would have worse products? Students would be missing out on the things that they previously got for free, now they're having to pay for maybe under the new system?
I don't think so. I'm not talking extortionate prices. I'm talking very, very cheap. And they knowing that that money is going to fund their university experience in the end of the day. So that money is going to go straight back into the union for clubs and societies and events, things like that.
So the money from the charity shop would go back to the Students' Union rather than being donated to another charity?
Yeah, the union is a charity at the end of the day. And of course there's also the potential to donate to a charity in town. So looking at maybe investing a small amount in a charity, say a different one each month, like a local homeless charity or something like that, but as well as the majority going to the union.
Because a lot of people maybe reading your manifesto would think it was to donate to another charity, but it's actually going back to the Students' Union.
And I've had, so it's a second-hand shop essentially, but I just use the word charity, and obviously I know that people would maybe not know that the union is a charity, but it is aimed at that.
I mean, is it a side distraction, but similar to what I asked Ola, when really the Students' Union needs to be making money out of the profit-making ventures of the commercial services like the shops and bars? Could it be a distraction potentially?
I don't think so. I think of course I'd work to make the bars and shops as financially sustainable as possible, but this is something with very low startup costs. There's not any sort of big risk involved. It might start off as something very small. You need almost no money to start it up, and then if it is successful it can maybe become something a bit bigger.
Okay, Lucy, we're out of time, I'm afraid. Thanks very much for that. Those are your Operations Officer candidates. You can read their full manifestos on our website, sussexstudent.com/elections, where you can find out about all the candidates standing in all the positions. Now, next up, we have the candidates for Education Officer. The Education Officer is responsible for offering advice and representing students on all academic matters. They regularly meet with university managers and senior committees that deal with teaching and learning decisions. Let's first of all hear from the Education Officer candidates.
Hi, I'm Julia and I'm running to be your Education Officer. I want to enhance technology, enrich community and empower students with consultation on e-submissions, school-specific study skills days and clear routes of support for the students who need it, and I'd love to publish an online academic journal showcasing the best undergraduate and postgraduate work each year. For more information, check out my manifesto or get in touch and vote Juliet for education.
Hi, my name is Alana Green and I'm running for the position of your Education Officer. As your Education Officer, I will draw on extensive experience in the American academic system, as well as my experience here as PG rep for the School of English at Sussex. As an international postgrad, I have learned a considerable amount of how the UK academic system works, and I'm able to use this knowledge to determine what is necessary to improve the quality of life for students here at Sussex. Furthermore, when it comes to fee increases, where students are being treated as profit generators, I will aim to ensure that students are given the quality of education and depth of experience that they are paying for in ever-increasing fees. Vote for me, Alana Green. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Ian Llewellyn. I'll be running for education. I have a number of key points which I want to push. The first of which is to oppose the cutting of positions for associate tutors, which is leading to the increase in seminar sizes, which we are seeing at the moment. I also want to oppose, to the best of my ability, the current privatisation plans, and I wish the union to take an active campaigning role in opposition to the privatisations. I also want to push for more core readings in the library, so as to lessen the financial burden on students when they have to buy books at the start of the year.
The first question is to all the Education Officer candidates. So none of you mentioned student reps in your 100 words manifesto. Why is this? Juliet first.
Well, my manifesto is full of innovative and new ideas to improve our education, and I really wanted to focus on getting these ideas across. However, the rep scheme features in my extended manifesto. As first year rep, third year rep and now chair rep, I know the strengths and weaknesses of the scheme, and I use ideas in my extended manifesto to incorporate the rep scheme and hopefully improve it. From school-specific study skills days, which incorporate a range of support that students can get, to union societies for each school.
So you see the student rep scheme as an important and valuable part, and you'd work to expand it.
Yeah, I think I would work to strengthen the role of the reps and clarify what they do for students, because I think that's kind of unclear. We've got mentors, reps, academic advisors, the Life Centre, the union's own advice centre, and so I'd want to use specific days to clarify what each of the roles of the support services are, and to put faces to the support that's available for students.
Okay, Alana, Why did you not mention student reps in your 100-word manifesto?
Well, it's not in my manifesto, but it is in my extended manifesto. And as a postgraduate representative for the School of English, I definitely have firsthand experience of the importance of the reps and why they're necessary, especially with the Students' Union. And this year, while I've been a postgraduate representative, my experience has been very, very informative in terms of how the academic system here works, as well as why the reps are needed to help bridge the gap of communication between the faculty and the staff, as well as the students. And so as education officer, I would definitely use the representatives as that critical resource in terms of engaging the student community and getting information and having just all the information be more transparent.
Okay, Ian, what do you make of the student rep scheme? Working well at the moment?
I'd say in general, the reason I didn't include it in my manifesto is because I think the student rep scheme works quite well at the moment. And in general, I think there are more important questions that we, as potential education officers, have to talk about. For instance, the cutting of associate tutor positions, which leads to overcrowding in seminars. Also, the introduction of interactive lectures, where seminars are often substituted for 2-hour lectures that are meant to be interactive, but of course there's not much interaction. Although I'd say I've been a union councillor for 2 years, and I do think there needs to be a greater communication between reps, councillors and the elected officers. I think there's definitely a need to improve communications between those positions.
So in getting the different elected students talking together more, is that the answer?
I think the communication channels at the moment definitely need a lot of work. I think when I first started, I mean, I've had to chase up reps for my school myself. I don't actually, they don't actually hand you a list at the start of the year of the people you're meant to be working with, which I think definitely needs working on.
Okay, so it sounds like all of you. It's not that you hate the student rep scheme, that it wasn't in your manifesto. You've all got ideas for it, and you all think you could do with some improvements, but you'll take it all forward. Ian, staying on you with your manifesto question. You use the word oppose a number of times in your manifesto. Do you see the role as education officer, and you as education officer, if you were elected, in opposing management's decisions and getting involved in those confrontations with management?
I think essentially the role of a students' union is to defend the interests of students, and in many cases that often involves challenging decisions of management. I think if management were working in a completely functional way, that wouldn't be necessary, of course. But a lot of the decisions of the past few years, while I've been here and before, I think have been completely contrary to the interests of students. Things like the privatisation scheme, where students effectively haven't been consulted or had no control over this process. The cuts and closures to things such as the linguistics department, which is opposed not just by students but by staff and academics across the world. So yeah, I do think it's a question of standing up when standing up needs to happen. Definitely.
Do you, with all that's going on with management at the moment and the battles with student-led campaigns, do you see that as a difficult position for an education officer, inside in those committee meetings, one-to-one meetings with, say, the Deputy Vice-Chancellor responsible for teaching? Is that an awkward relationship? How do you see it working if you were elected?
I think it can be, but I think at the end of the day you have to remember who you're representing. You're not an officer to make friends with management. You're there to articulate the concerns of students. And that doesn't always involve, being friendly, cups of tea, sitting down. Oh, how's it going, Michael? Yeah, I think you have to be quite hard when in these situations when management are doing things that are contrary to the interests of students.
I mean, in previous years, full-time elected officers have stormed out of meetings with senior management, have refused to meet them, have, been heavily involved in kind of protest action and occupations. Is that a last resort? Is that kind of action something that should be on the table for full-time officers?
Yeah, it's definitely, of course it's a last resort, but given that students have very little structural power in the functioning of the university, I think we should always applaud those principled stances. It shows that union officials are taking their job seriously. They're not in there for an easy ride. They're there to to fight for the interests of students, and if that involves annoying management sometimes, then so be it, I say.
Okay, Ian, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you for that. Alana, in your manifesto you mention a high-quality education, and you also mention international students as well. What do you think about those who say that, you know, the students who pay more money to be here should get more for their money? What would you say to those people?
Well, as an international student, I am well aware in the costs that it takes to attend education and receive a degree overseas. And when I mean quality of education, it's not just privatization where they're privatizing the profits and treating students as profit generators. And what I would aim to do is to include student, and especially the student reps, in making sure that the students are achieving the goals that they're wanting to receive by pursuing advanced degrees, whether it's their undergraduate or their graduate degree, or even the doctoral candidates. This privatization affects everybody. And so with that, the quality of education has to be imperative. It has to be first and foremost the priority for the education officer, especially because of the fact that privatization is going to be affecting all of us.
So when you mention quality education in your manifesto, do you mean it in the context of privatization? Do you see quality education as under threat by these privatization
Very
moves?
much so, yeah. And the articles that I've been reading on The Guardian and other such news agencies here in the UK have been so enlightening and so informative. And so privatization is the biggest threat to the quality of education for all students, whether they're undergraduates, postgraduates, local or international.
But, what if the people who said, privatising at the moment, catering and estates, how is that going to affect the quality of education, as you put it?
Because by putting the emphasis on the profit that will be generated in terms of catering services, yes, the quality, that is important in terms of what services are provided here to students, but that also includes the operations officer and more ethical and environmental ways that can be handled. And in terms of education, when we take the focus off of education, whether it's with privatization, whether it's with catering, then students are ultimately going to lose out on that.
If I could just press you on the original question,
yes.
on that balance of international students paying more, yes, should they get more for their money, yes, no? What would you say to that?
I think that all students should be receiving the education that they're paying for. Yes, as an international student, I have had to pay more money to be here.
But same service,
Yeah, it is the same service, and especially when it comes to marking, I had a really hard time because of the fact that I was being assessed just the same as all the students here.
I'm afraid we're out of time,
That's
Alana.
okay.
Thank you for that. Juliet, in your manifesto, you mention welcome talks jointly with academics and the Students' Union when new students come here to Sussex. Now, these already take place, so how do you change them?
I just kind of want to bring in all of the support services that Sussex offers so that it's not just the academics and the union, but also the Student Life Centre and people from the Advice and Representation Centre could be there, so that students who are entirely new to Sussex know the faces of people who are there to help them, and the roles can be really tightly clarified, so that if students have got an issue, they're not bouncing around from service to service, which I think happens quite a lot at the moment.
So do you see as better signposting as something as education officer you'd work on for students?
Yeah, I think I would want to be a really good individual advocate for any student who had a problem, and I think part of that would be just helping students get to the services that they need.
And I mean, on that point of working with the university to, do joint talks, do you see yourself working quite closely with management if you were elected education officer? A close working relationship with the university for you?
Yeah, I think that you have to work closely with the university because they're the ones that are providing the education that you're trying to maintain and to make the best that it can be. So I would work closely with them, taking the students' opinions and making sure that they have students' opinions at the forefront of their minds.
So it'd be, a closer relationship, but still putting students first. Is that that priority?
Absolutely. I think I just want to act as an advocate for students.
And for those who would say, maybe, at times you need to be able to walk out of that meeting, like we were saying with Ian.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if they were pushing you and they weren't acting in a professional manner, which arguably they aren't at the moment, you would definitely have to take a strong stance, or as strong a stance as they are, and be as professional as you can be, which would show them up if they weren't being that way.
So privatisation for you as well, like the others have mentioned, threat to quality of education at Sussex, would you say?
I think that for students to receive the best degrees that they can, it's imperative that they feel safe on campus and secure, and that it's an autonomous institution, and I think we can all see that privatisation and management not listening to students is a threat on us.
So you'd, as education officer, vocally opposing that to management?
Yeah, I think that you kind of have to. No, I don't think you have to. But
it helps.
It helps.
Okay, Juliet, thank you very much for that. We're out of time, I'm afraid, education officers. Good luck in your campaign. Best of luck over the next week when everyone's voting. And you can find out about all the education officer candidates and their manifestos on our website, sussexstudent.com/elections. Now, all of the candidates tonight who are running to be a full-time elected officer at the Students' Union want to lead the Students' Union on your behalf. But what impact does the Students' Union actually have on the lives of students at Sussex? As a registered charity, all charities have to produce an impact report, and we've got an excerpt from the Students' Union's impact report video for the last year, just to explain some of the things the Students' Union does for students here at Sussex.
Valued most were the lovely people, the flexible hours, and working in a friendly environment. Dissertation Dash remained in Falmer House with nearly 1,000 students taking part. 43 awards were given out to recognize the achievements of student volunteers and student staff at our biggest ever student awards, which were held at the Amex Stadium this year. Sussex student Max Wolf designed a Students' Union iPhone app that has now had over 300 downloads, and we worked on over 200 student computers in our volunteer-run computer shop. Freshers Week 2011, in which 8,250 tickets were sold, consisted of 28 events, 54% of which were non-alcohol based. We provide societies with £15,000 worth of funding, and our huge range of societies have done some incredible things. Waves were part of a national competition, Suds and Smuts performed as part of Brighton Fringe, URF did a live broadcast with Fatboy Slim, and UniTV got nominated for 9 National Student Media Awards. We have also worked toward removing social and academic problems affecting students, both on an individual and collective level. We've been increasing students' positive impact on the environment, ensuring that they are recognized by the university and local community as agents of positive and progressive change, and are inspired to effect change at a local, national, and international level. All of our achievements meant we were shortlisted for Students' Union of the Year, so a huge thank you to everyone who makes Sussex Students' Union what it is. This year has been an amazing year for the Students' Union. We've achieved so many exciting...
That was the Students' Union's impact report, voiced by Lindsay, who's a volunteer on the Students' Union reception desk in Falmer House. Now, up next, it's the candidates for Activities Officer. The Activities Officer is responsible for looking after the hundreds of sports clubs and societies that we have here at Sussex, and they also oversee all the volunteering opportunities run by the Students' Union, both within the union and in the local community. Now, there are 5 candidates for Activities Officer, so we've got them in 2 batches here in our studio here on the Sussex campus. And first up, we've got Nick, Patrick and Lena. And the first question is to all 3 candidates. So, with increasing, student numbers here at Sussex, and they're set to increase quite a lot over the next few years, and limited resources and funding for our sports clubs and societies, what do you think should be the priority if funding's limited? Nick first.
Well, it's a rather boring answer, Kit, but I think the main way to go is definitely for balance, as always. And I think to a large extent, a lot of clubs will decide their own destiny. I mean, for example, for Frisbee, they're national champions. I'm sure for them, the priority will be to carry on winning. But of course, we can't lose sight of participation. I mean, without people participating at the beginner level and coming to our clubs and trying our sports out, there is no club. The club doesn't exist. And I think with good planning at the start of the year, we can identify where the weakness is, if it's more involved in competing at elite level or getting people involved, and we can really make sure that both sides are good and make sure that we can get good participation at a beginner level, but also make sure we achieve good things. It would be a shame not to, having had our best ever season in Bucks last year, to not keep pushing on to the elite level as well.
So in terms of sport for you, it's very much letting the sports clubs decide?
I think a lot of it is. It has to be kind of a lot of independence for them, because I think some clubs will be less established, so they won't be doing so much competing, or they're not in Bucks, for example. So I think for them, it's up to them to decide what their priorities lie, whereas some are much more, competitive, such as Frisbee, so they'll want to focus intently more on the winning, for example.
I say so, Nick, letting sports clubs decide, autonomy for sports clubs in terms of funding as student numbers increase. Patrick, what do you think about this argument? Funding as student numbers increase, where does the money go?
Well, obviously, I'd like to start by saying I would strongly argue that there's a real need for the university to invest more in the union, and I would lobby for that. However, in relation to the question, I would say there's a few areas that I think are the places where I would put that I would focus on, which is new organisations that are just starting up that need a bit of a boost, and also ones that kind of have beneficial effects on the local community or on the environment. So I think if someone had created really positive fostering links with the community, then I think that would be something to celebrate and give an increased amount of funding possibly to.
So, if it was over a sports club or a society who was just based at Sussex with students, or one that did outreach in the community, you'd always prioritise the one that does outreach in the community.
Well, I would like to, obviously you've got to take it on a case-by-case basis, but I think the outreach in the community is a really positive thing that needs to be celebrated.
And, how else? Autonomy for sports clubs, do you agree with that in terms of where the funding goes?
I think some level of autonomy is good, yes.
And as activities officer, how would you play that balance, if there's limited funding as student numbers grow and grow and these sports teams are getting bigger and bigger?
Well, I would argue that there needs to be some kind of democratic consultation that involves all people from all sports clubs and societies that engage with and to work towards some kind of future that everyone can engage with and be happy with.
Lina, student numbers increasing, not enough money. What do you think on this question?
Well, I'd like to emphasize the idea of creating a knowledge bank where students can share their ideas and their plans. Because one of the points in my manifesto is providing knowledge for students on how to acquire outside sponsorship for their sports teams or societies. And when you put the skilled students that we have at Sussex together and the amount of knowledge and previous contacts that they have, if you put that all together, it would create a sense of community where people would be able to help each other out on how to do it. Like with the women's rugby team, the driving factor of our team is team spirit. And we didn't have enough funding from the uni to have our coach come to away games with us. So we have sponsorship from outside, and we've been able to do that because our committee worked really hard and we've worked all together to do it. So with an increasing number of students, there would be more people to share their ideas and plans. There'd be more skills, more knowledge, and these previous contacts that people could use. So more students would be beneficial to everyone in this kind of.
Even if there's less money per head for each of those students being involved in sports and societies.
Well, yeah, because they get to work together on, one team can tell another team on how to get this kind of sponsorship from, we get £1,000 from our sponsor, and it pays for things we want to do. Like we've gone to a professional match and, that kind of thing. So.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time, Lina. Thank you for that, though. In all our haste with the impact report, which we showed about the Students' Union, we haven't shown your candidate little videos. Steamrolling ahead, guys. So we're now going to see these three candidates, before I ask them their question on their manifesto, their little short clips for them. Let's hear from them.
Hey, I'm Nick and I'm running to be your new activities officer. I want to make sure that every single member of every society and club feels valued, no matter how big or small their contribution. With the university's upcoming expansion, I will fight to ensure that the new gym and sports facilities are the best that they can possibly be. I will also ensure that you receive more recognition for the fantastic work you do on a daily basis. I will improve student awards as well as introduce a new Hall of Fame. I also hope to bring in a new headline sponsor for all sports teams, and with this improved unity and recognition, all societies and clubs can really come together to create something special at the University of Sussex.
Hey guys, my name is Karina and I'm running for Activities Officer. My key aim next year is involvement. Whether you're an international, postgrad, mature, Erasmus or BSMS student, there is a way for you to get involved in the Students' Union. I've gotten so much back from the union in my 2 years here and I want you to enjoy it as much as I have. I plan to emphasize the role of community engagement between sports teams and societies, and I want to promote how easy and rewarding it is to get involved with volunteering. I also want to expand and improve the events calendar and make key events such as Freshers Week and Student Awards bigger and better. So remember, no one is keener than Carolina, so vote Lina for activities.
Okay, so this question is to Patrick on your manifesto. Now, in your 100-word manifesto, Patrick, you list a lot of your experience that you think obviously would make you good for the role. What are the ideas, actually, as activities officer, that you'd implement?
Well, my ambition is to kind of create as kind of involving and democratic a union as possible, which engages people in as kind of participatory a way as possible. So like people from all kinds of sports clubs should be able to engage as well as they possibly can with the activities process.
And there's activities committee, societies committee, sports committee at the moment. Do you think they're not adequate? Would you
No, I think
change
they're
those?
great. I think they're great, and I think that they should be given kind of as much kind of space to view their opinions as possible. And also, I think it's important that the activities officer goes and engages with all societies and sports clubs and kind of as much as possible and sees what their needs are and kind of tries to engage with them as much as possible.
So, as activities officer, would it be kind of much of the same? Is there change needed in?
Well, I think a lot of the role of activities officer is kind of, it's already there. It's like some of it is administrative, some of it is like engaging with people on certain things that kind of you don't change. Some of it is organising certain events that you always organise. So I think obviously it has to be much of the same. But I think that also I would provide a fresh breath of air with kind of more kind of engagement and more democracy.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thank you. Lina, now you say you want to get more students involved. A lot of candidates say that. Yeah. What do you think the current barriers are to those students getting involved, and what would you do to remove those barriers, to change that?
Well, with the main people I want to target, international students, BSMS, postgraduate, mature, those kind of people, the hard to reach as they're called. I think that it comes from both sides, where they're scared to approach it. Maybe they've come and they don't speak, good enough English or that kind of thing. And I want to take that away because, focusing in on Chinese students. Well, I grew up in China, so I speak Chinese. So I want to kind of create something where they feel comfortable, where they can come and talk to me, and I can, create events that would be more appropriate to them, like during Freshers Week, more events that postgraduate and mature students could come to and, talk to each other, because they don't usually have the same kind of mindset as freshers who have come straight out of college and stuff.
And what do you think currently are the barriers stopping, like your example, Chinese students engaging in the union in sports clubs and societies? What's stopping, what are the barriers there?
Well, I think there is definitely that kind of language barrier there, and there is the outlook of, other students who are kind of like, oh, they stick together and, they might not speak a good English, so I'm not going to try. And then they've come to a foreign country, and I get that. I'm an international student. I only came to England a year and a half ago. I understand how intimidating it can be, and when you find someone who has something in common with you, you do tend to stick with them.
Afraid we're out of time, Lina.
No
Thanks
worries.
for that, though. Now, Nick, in your 100-word manifesto, you don't actually mention volunteering, which is part of the job of activities officer. What would you do for volunteering at Sussex?
I think one of the big things we can do with volunteering is make it more accessible. We need to put it out there a little bit more, because I feel like I see emails go around to me every now and then from the volunteering department, but I don't feel that's quite enough. I think we need to make sure it gets out there more, and I think we need to do things like talk at the start of lectures, for example, and seminars. We need to really take it onto the laps of students to get them involved, because I feel like a lot of people want to get involved. Everyone wants experience with their CVs, extra little tidbits to write at the bottom of the CVs, they're good things they've done, and I think we should get more involved and really promote that a little bit more.
And why do you think students aren't getting involved in volunteering at the moment, do you think?
I feel like part of it the only time I ever see it really is through emails, and I feel like a lot of the time that's just not very concrete. You can often forget an email quite easily. I feel like it's not always connecting with students in quite the way they see it, and it's not always tailored to what they need. For example, it might not be tailored to the department or their sport or their society. I think we can do more to tailor specific volunteering projects to different clubs and societies.
And you mentioned, putting it on your CV. What other reasons do you think students would want to volunteer at Sussex?
Well, I think, if I'm honest, I think the CV sort of thing will be the main beneficiary. But I also think a lot of people do want to start giving things back. I think in sports clubs, you do often want to start giving things back to your sport. And I think that could also be a good opportunity to volunteer as a coach, for example. I've done that before myself. And I think that would be a good way for sports clubs as well to get involved in volunteering.
Okay, Nick, we're out of time. Thank you for that, though. Good luck to all of you in your campaign as activities officer. There are 2 other activities officer candidates who we'll be hearing from in the next batch, but for the moment, thank you to you 3. We've got lots of tweets coming in. Remember, the hashtag all this evening is hashtag Sussex Elections, and we're using that hashtag all week as well. Stephen Pomfret says the next great TV presenter has been found. Thank you, Stephen. Matt Broughton thinks that one of the candidates for comms officer is head and shoulders above the rest. Imogen says she really enjoyed candidate question time. And Sam says he's watching the Sussex Elections candidate question time live from Lebanon. You guys are doing great. So we've got some international viewers. This is truly, and I said at the beginning, we're broadcasting all around the world. I didn't actually think people would be watching outside East Slope and Falmer Bar, so it's good to know you're watching, Sam. Thanks very much for that. Up next, it's our next two candidates for Activities Officer. Let's hear their VTs.
Hey, I'm Richard and I'm your current Activities Officer, and I'm running for a second term because I want to keep on giving students more opportunities to do things they love to do. I want to continue the Campus Halls Cup and make the campus more vibrant. I want to keep on giving students more opportunities, so Got to Dance, giving people more events, so more nightclub events, and I want to keep on as an officer support students with the campaigns such as the 235.
Hello, my name's Robert. I'm running for Activities Officer. As Activities Officer, I want to make sure that the clubs and societies at this university have access to more buildings and more resources than previously we've been able to do. I aim to do this by freeing up the university's buildings. These are all sitting empty at night, and I'd like the union to have access to them. I also want to have a look at the union's resources and make sure that all the clubs and societies know about them and have access to them. That's what I aim to do, so vote for me.
Okay, so the same question I asked to the other Activities Officer candidates. As student numbers are increasing, where are the priorities for sports clubs and societies as funding is very, very limited? Richard first.
I think the priority for sports at least is to make sure that we get better facilities. I think that's the key to solving a lot of the issues that we have. If we have better facilities, then we'll be able to increase participation. With better facilities, we'll be able to get more elite sport going. But then it's not just about the sports facilities that students will pay for, it's also about creating social areas. So we have a lot of table tennis now around campus, but it's also potentially looking at basketball hoops and other projects like what I've done previously, the Campus Halls Cup. So social sport, getting people out and about, and it's not just about paying a sports membership and taking part in the teams. It's about that recreational sport that you can do.
On the facilities though, I mean those kind of facilities projects require major investment. How do you go about convincing the university to do that?
That's something that we've already been looking at with the Students' Union, and it's something which I've been talking a lot with Charles Dudley about. The university have now allocated us some funding to look further into sports investment. So we're now in talks with architects and looking at ideas to improve the facilities. So the sports complex at the bottom would now become a full indoor sports complex with more sports halls, and then up top would be outdoor sports facilities.
So as student numbers increase, one priority for you, better facilities.
Better facilities, and then in terms of our societies, more opportunities for them.
Okay, we're out of time, I'm afraid. There, Rob, what do you think as student numbers are getting more? What is the priority?
Well, I mean, the clear priority is to have students enjoying themselves. I mean, that's why they're coming to societies, to have fun. But I mean, one thing I'd say is that most societies I know of don't need additional funding. I mean, for example, SUDS and Polsoc are relatively profitable for the for the union, and I'm not aware of that many societies that are needing additional funding. Obviously, they want additional funding. It's always nice. But in terms of sports clubs, they get their funding generally from the sports membership, and I haven't ever heard a single student saying, I want the sports membership to go higher. So that's something we need to be really careful about. I mean,
so you don't see funding as student numbers increase necessarily as an issue if the
not necessarily, because the student numbers will go up and then more people will be in societies, and the societies that have clubs and societies that have sort of funding by the number of members, as their memberships increase, their funding will increase, and as their membership increases, they need more funding. So
what about the societies that don't charge membership for it? There's lots that's free.
There are an awful lot of societies. They generally run fundraisers when they need money, or they use resources which are free to them, mainly because they are union societies, like rooms, for example. They don't have to pay for them, which is amazing.
Okay, we're out of time, I'm afraid, Rob. The next questions are based on the candidates' manifestos. Staying with you, Rob, you've got lots of ideas for societies in your manifesto. What do you think the main issues facing sports clubs are at Sussex?
The main issue facing sports clubs is similar to the societies, is access to resources. I mean, we've got the sports centre, which is an amazing complex. But there are an awful lot of sports clubs, I have to be careful to say sports clubs and not sports societies, sports clubs which are currently running in other buildings, other rooms, because again, they don't have access to the spaces they need. We have so many things. We only have a limited amount of space. I want to fill up the university with sports societies, everybody everywhere having a great time. Not sure, maybe not during lecture times.
So more involvement.
More involvement, more spaces. We've got the space. We've got a huge campus. We can do so much stuff inside.
And one problem facing sports clubs, if you had to put your finger on it?
One's
Main
problem. I would say it's space.
Space.
I've heard so many things saying we don't have the time to do that. And that doesn't mean they don't have the time. It means there's somebody else using that space in that time.
Okay, Rob, thank you. Richard, to you on your manifesto, you list a lot of big events, big ideas for new big events in your manifesto. But if you had to say what are the practical day-to-day things for societies that you'd focus on, what would they be?
The practical day-to-day things would be making sure that room bookings work, making sure that societies know how they can apply for funding. I think some of the key issues for our societies are they don't know how to get funding, they don't know how to go about their room bookings, and it's about solving those little problems for them. Another key issue for them is space. We have so many rooms in Falmer House. It's about making sure that all of our societies have the right amount of space and time to be able to make sure that they can practice and do what they want to do.
So if there's a society president watching this in Falmer Bar, East Slope Bar, what the one thing you're going to do for their society next year? Room bookings, is that the thing? Making it easy to book rooms?
Giving them more opportunities to be able to do what they do and then being able to showcase their talents afterwards.
Okay, Richard, Rob, thank you. Very good luck in your campaign. Best of luck with it. Now remember, there were 5 candidates in total for Activities Officer. So if it's been too long, you came in halfway through. Remember, all the manifestos for all the candidates for Activities Officer and all the others are on our website. So check it out, sussexstudent.com/elections, and also their extended manifestos are on there as well. And we are live blogging tonight's event, sussexstudent.com/candidate question time. And also apparently the UniTV Facebook is going crazy. It's facebook.com/UniTV live. Now up next, it's the Welfare Officer candidates. The Welfare Officer is responsible for advising students and representing them on all non-academic matters. So this could be university complaints, security, the cost of housing, transport to campus, or any other non-academic matter. And they have regular meetings with senior university managers who are responsible for non-academic services on campus. Let's hear from the candidates.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name's Hannah and I'm running for Welfare Officer. My main aims are to improve inclusion on campus and to reduce stigma. Some of the ways I want to work towards doing this are to continue and extend the buddy scheme, to improve wheelchair access on campus, especially to the library, to work towards restructuring the mitigating evidence system, and also to provide free training, disability awareness training sessions to students and staff. So I have many more points, and if you want to ask me about any of them, please approach me on campus and vote for Hannah.
I'm Sophie and I'm running for Welfare Officer. I'm doing a taught postgraduate in gender studies. Because of my interest in gender inequality, I'm co-chairing the women's group this year. In the past, I've worked with a sustainable transport company as a parliamentary assistant. This experience puts me in a great position to work on upcoming transport issues next year. In my manifesto, I promised to introduce a fast-track 25 bus and work on existing cycling provision. I would also like to encourage student diversity in student media by introducing an award. I also want to make Freshers Week really exciting and inclusive for international students and postgrads. Sophie will sort Sussex.
Now, as well as Hannah and Sophie, who you saw in those videos, I'm also joined by Mary, who's also running for the position of Welfare Officer. Now, the first question is to all 3 candidates. Now, the Spotted in Sussex Library Facebook page has had thousands of likes over the past few weeks. What do you see it as? Do you see it as a bit of harmless fun, or something that the Students' Union should be concerned about and vocally opposing? Mary first.
Actually, this came up at in a discussion at the Zero Tolerance Working Group.
and there's been quite a few complaints from students and also library staff who promised to keep an eye on it. The library should be somewhere where people will feel safe and comfortable to go and study and not be worried about whether people can take photos and then post comments that are racist, sexist and homophobic. And actually the Students' Union needs to be taking a strong stance against that and challenging these kind of views. We shouldn't be tolerating any kind of this behaviour. What I do quite like is other universities as being a response set up to this, whereby people post compliments onto another Facebook group in order to combat this. This issue has been one that's made national headlines and The Guardian and a few other papers. And it gives a really bad reputation, not just for the students and the Students' Union, but for the university itself. It really needs to be something that the Student Union tackles.
So very serious, and it needs vocal action on your part in terms
Definitely.
of trying to get it to stop.
Yes.
And the solution, you mentioned their rival Facebook pages, is that the best answer, combating the problem on social media?
That's not the best answer, that's just one tactic that students have taken upon themselves to do. I think the best answer is actually wide campaigns around liberation, around what is and what is acceptable. Like on the Zero Tolerance Working Group, we're looking at doing campaigns around consent, what sexual harassment is, and things like that.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thanks for that, Mary. Hannah, what do you make of this? I mean, there's been a lot of discussion about these spotted groups, not just in the library, but the gym and other places as well. What do you make of it?
Well, first I think it's really interesting that it is so popular, and I'd quite like, if I did become welfare officer, to kind of try to see why it's so popular and try to take some kind of skills from that to engage more people on campus. I'd want to do a survey and to ask people what they think of it, to try and engage people. Also to try and find out the person who's running the Facebook group and ask them how they're going to deal with the harmful posts, to moderate the comments. But I also like the idea of kind of a compliment group. I think it's really important that it doesn't lead to kind of hate posts, racist and homophobic comments and sexual harassment. I've done lots of stuff with Survivors Network. I'm a volunteer with them, and they're an organisation that supports survivors of sexual abuse. And I think it's really important to kind of build on those skills and work
But you think, sorry, just to challenge, but you think a bit of research before any action, is that what you're saying? That we need to ask students why it's popular first?
Yeah, so I think it's really important to engage with people rather than just me going off on my views, and I want to do outreach as if I became the welfare officer, to just really understand how people feel, how students feel and why they feel that way.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time. Thanks for that, Hannah. Sophie, what do you make of this debate? Because it has caused a lot of debate on campus, these spotted groups. What do you think the right solution is?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's neither harmless fun nor something that should be completely opposed. I think there's a positive and negative side to it. I think the positive side is that there's lots of lovely poems and comments on that. I also think that there are some sexist comments on there and homophobic and racist ones that should be challenged. I'm co-chairing the women's group this year, and we had a discussion about it, and a lot of students felt that they had pressure on them to dress a certain way or to wear makeup, and I don't think that's pressure young women should be feeling. Also, the way some female students have been described on that Facebook in terms of their size or their clothing, I think is really negative and misogynist. So as welfare officer, I don't think it's something I would be encouraging, and I don't want to dismiss it as harmless fun either. I think it's fantastic.
But not necessarily, like you said at the beginning, not necessarily completely opposed. Is that what you're saying? Not necessarily.
And I would agree with Mary that a good way to take the negative element out of it is to start up something like Sussex Uni Compliments. And also...
So tackling it on social media.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm afraid we're out of time, but thanks for that answer, Sophie. Hannah, to you, now, you mentioned in your manifesto that you want to raise awareness of mental health issues and disability issues. Do you think on these kind of issues that awareness on its own is enough, or are there actually steps that you'd want to see taken for Sussex students?
Well, part of the kind of awareness raising and something that I'd want to build on is that lots of funding is being cut to kind of mental health counselling and all of this sort of thing. So I'd really want to lobby the university to make sure that there was more funding to possibly have longer counselling opening times and this sort of thing. Also, I really want to work on signposting and training on signposting on campus and amongst staff, because I think that is a huge thing that needs more students need to be aware of it, and we need to take understand the cultural impacts and issues, like international students, how to approach them, how to communicate signposting, like organisations to them.
So it's not just awareness, there are actually problems with how things are being done at Sussex
I
at the
think
moment.
so, yeah, definitely. Also with mitigating evidence, it's really badly affecting people with mental health issues and continuous or sporadic disabilities, so disabilities that affect their work sometimes but not others, and it's the mitigating evidence system needs to support them much better. I'd really want to lobby the university to do with that.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. We're out of time, but thank you. Now, Sophie, in your manifesto, you say that you want to make changes to Freshers' Week for international and postgraduate students. What do you think needs to change in the current programme?
Right. Well, I'm an EU student myself, and although I only moved from the Netherlands to here, I have the experience of what it's like to be completely cut off from your support network. So I think it's really important that students don't feel isolated and that they can engage with the student population. So I would encourage events that are targeted at international students that don't just come from the study abroad office. So I was looking for something from home when I came here and I couldn't find that, so I would organise an event where students can find people from their own home countries, because I know there's societies for that but not for all countries. And I would also target other students groups like student parents, have events where they can take their children to, for instance, and more things that are during the daytime and don't have alcohol.
So it's a whole new events programme for international students and hard-to-reach groups.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something we need to work on because we want to engage as many people as possible.
What would you say to some people who say, actually, no, it's better to include, all students in the big events that you are currently putting on, or do you think that's not possible?
I think that's already happening to an extent. I do think there's a divide between international students and UK students, and I would encourage the students to come together. And for instance, one way to do that is set up a language exchange programme where...
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time, but thank you, Sophie.
Yeah.
Now, Mary, a lot of your manifesto, especially the 100 words, focuses on good things that Students' Union is currently doing, in your opinion, that you think it should keep on doing. What would you say your key new ideas are if you had to, pick your top new ideas as welfare officer if you were elected?
Well, I think one of the actually really important things I want to introduce is a Know Your Rights housing guide. So at the moment there's quite a lot of support for students in terms of how to go about searching for a new home, putting down your deposit, letting agents. But what we don't actually have much of is what your rights are once you've moved in. So say there's mould everywhere, your landlord's not responding, the sink's leaking, those kind of issues. Students need to know if they have the rights to maybe withhold their rent. And actually having a basic, simplified Know Your Rights guide would be really useful for a lot of students, so they know exactly where they can go to get support and know what to do in those kind of situations.
And do you think more of those kind of guides for students, that's something the Students' Union should be doing more of, producing more of those, more guides for students on those issues?
I think we've got to balance that. We don't want to have the Students' Union just publishing masses and masses of guides and just drowning students in bits of paper and confusing them. But some simplified Know Your Rights guides tend to be really useful. I know that the Students' Union gave out Know Your Rights guides for your legal rights at the NUS demonstrations, and that was really useful for quite a lot of students. So those, as long as they're kind of capped and they're not everywhere all the time, I think would be good.
But do you accept that you do want to continue a lot of the stuff that Students' Union is currently doing? You want to continue a lot of that work?
Yeah, definitely. I've been the Equality and Diversity Officer for the last year, so I've been working on a variety of different issues, like the Times Change campaign. We've just had the survey results back in. That's going to be launched soon, so I'm really excited about challenging that kind of stigma that's on campus. There's a Zero Tolerance working group that I'm part of, and I really need that to continue. In the Postgraduate Association, the elections are currently going for the postgraduate chair, which I think is absolutely amazing. I think that's going to be one of the best ways that we're actually going to go and engage postgraduate students and get their feedback and get them better represented.
So some agreement on the need to engage postgraduate students
definitely.
From the different candidates. Okay, Mary, we're out of time, but thank you. Thank you to all of you. Good luck in your campaign. Voting, of course, is open all next week, Monday from 9 a.m. to Friday at 5 p.m. And it's really quick and easy to vote online at sussexstudent.com/vote. Keep those tweets coming in. Remember, the hashtag is Sussex Elections, and we'll read some of those out in a moment or two. Now, finally, it's the last candidate position, and that's the candidate of Students' Union President. Now, the President is the figurehead of the Students' Union, and they represent students and the Students' Union on some of the highest decision-making bodies in the university, including Senate and Council. And they also are a spokesperson for the Students' Union to national and local media, and also they work heavily with the National Union of Students, NUS, which the Students' Union here at Sussex is affiliated to. Now, the presidential candidates, again, there's more than 3, so we've got them in 2 batches. So let's first hear from the first 3 candidates wanting to become your Students' Union president.
Hi there, my name's Adriano and I'm running for Students' Union President. If elected President, I'd uphold 3 main policy proposals. 1, an end to the privatisation of the university services by upholding Students' Union policy of negotiations with the university management. 2, financial independence for the Students' Union by channeling funds directly from students rather than from the university. 3, increased participation of the Students' Union by creating school assemblies throughout campus for grassroots participation of students.
Hi, I'm Tawanda. I'll be running for SU President. The main reason why I'm running is because I want to see a shift in campaigns from national to local campaigns. I really want to see the Lemon Bus back and running, and I really want to see students getting involved and getting behind that. I want to give students a better choice, so online voting in referendums, and really get the student body involved. I also want to increase the dialogue between the union and the university. I think it's very important with the impending growth and outsourcing of our campus services.
Hi, my name's Alex and I'm running for Student Union President. As President, I would improve communication between students, the union and the university to ensure that students' best interests are kept at heart during policy implementation and the process of planning. I'll reveal how your tuition fees are spent. Campaign for all core readings to become an online resource, continue to critically assess privatisation plans, and also work closely with local authorities to improve regulations surrounding in-town housing.
Now, our first question is to the first 3 candidates that we have standing for President of the Students' Union. It's been in the news for 2 weeks now. Occupations, they divide opinion. Did they actually achieve anything? Adriano first.
Well, thank you for the question first and foremost. And I think, in short, I'd answer yes. But I think it's important to ask ourselves what we're referring to when we're asking this question, because I think it's quite important to look at occupations in the context in which they're coming from. And the current occupation in Bramber House is one of a last resort after all the other avenues of communication have been spent, from petitions and negotiations, question and answer sessions, etc. So it's important to put it into a context. Now, if we look at occupations as an achievement, you know, I mean, just the fact that we're talking about it today is an enormous achievement, and the fact that it's been all over the news, it's part of a long tradition of student action that students take when they're passionate about subjects. And so, you know, it brings about this spirit of collegiality and community that universities sometimes now have lost. And I think that's why I think they achieve something.
In terms of what they achieve, is it that press coverage and that sense of community in terms of what they achieve?
I mean, beyond that, they are actually aiming to achieve an end to the privatization, and they're a product of the composite parts. So as long as people maintain the momentum, then they will achieve something. And when people stop, they might not achieve something.
Okay, thank you, Adriano. Tawanda, occupations, what's your view on them? Do they achieve something?
I think they do. I think they achieve something in terms of getting the word out. I think a lot of students some students didn't actually know that outsourcing was happening, which I was pretty astonished by. So it's important to get people like Will Self talking to students. However, I do think it's actually slightly dangerous to think that this is the final solution. I don't think it is the final option. I think that the university and the union have failed together in engaging in real dialogue, and I don't think that is the final option. I don't think occupation is the final option. I think it's important, and I think it's good that we are doing it. It's admirable that students are there and they care that much. But it's certainly not the final option, and I think we...
What is that? More dialogue?
More dialogue. I think we need someone who can really talk to the students, to the university management, and engage in real discussion with them. I don't think that has been, well, it obviously hasn't been successful. And I also think we should think about what will happen if outsourcing does happen. I think we need to take that vision because, let's be honest, the university management are probably going to go through this anyway. So we need to...
So you don't think, occupation as a last resort, as Adriano said, is going to reverse their decision?
Personally, no, I don't think it's going to reverse their decision. I think it's important that we get the word out so that the dialogue happens properly. But I don't think it's going to reverse the decision. So we need to be prepared. We need to have a vision for the future if it does.
Sorry, we're out of time with you. Thank you, Tawanda. Alex, what do you make of occupations? I mean, there's been slightly different views here. Do they achieve anything?
Undoubtedly, they do achieve something. When we look at the occupation of Bramber House, we see that privatisation has become the talk not only of our student town, but it's received national press coverage. Privatisation in higher education is now a huge talking point. It's also, in the case of Bramber House, forced dialogue with the university, which previously had been absent. It may not be when we wanted it, it may not be how we want it, but it's occurring, and that's the key difference. Occupations raise attention to the issue, but it is the dialogue, it is communications, it will be referendums that solve the issues.
So in your sense, they're only effective or achieve something if it leads to more, conversations and dialogue afterwards?
Yeah, an occupation itself will not change policy, but communications that arise out of it, that are forced out of it, will. And like in the case of Bramber House, as has been mentioned, this has been somewhat of a last resort, which is unfortunate, but that's what's happened, and from it has alerted not only our university to the issue of privatisation, but as I said, national coverage, and it will bring about potential changes in the future.
Okay, thank you, Alex. We're out of time on that one, I'm afraid. Now, the next questions are for each of the candidates based on their manifesto individually. Alex, staying with you. Now, you say you want to foster a transparent relationship with management in your manifesto. Do you see this as potentially a closer relationship than currently?
Yes, in short, yes. It will be a closer relationship, a more open relationship will be a closer relationship, and it will be closer in the sense of there will be an understanding between the university from the perspective of the students and the union of what issues are really important. And this closeness will hopefully lead to more communication, more dialogue, and that sense of management putting student views and student experience at the heart of their decisions.
What would you say to students who would say, actually, management aren't listening to students at Sussex and that close relationship isn't possible? What would you say to that?
A close relationship isn't impossible by any stretch of the imagination. Anyone that says anything's impossible when it comes to dialogue has failed to take the right approach. Now, it may be that, if elected, I spend a year banging my head on a brick wall for most of the time, but it will be a hearts and minds exercise. It won't just be the same old, same old. I will try different techniques at different times if one thing doesn't work.
So the students' union is better when it's got a close relationship with management?
Yeah, undoubtedly. You shouldn't bite the hand that feeds unless it abuses you. Like, the university does provide funding, it does assist us. We must remember that. And we must be constructive in the development of the university.
And just pressing you on that, what do you see as abuse? You said you don't bite the hand that feeds you unless they abuse you. What would management have to do to abuse the students' union?
To fail to listen, to fail to engage at an early stage.
So if they stopped having dialogue with you, if they stopped going into those...
If they stop having dialogue with us, we're seeing one of the end results now with the occupation. We're seeing students unhappy at their lack of consultation.
And that word transparent in your manifesto, when you mention a transparent relationship, is that something other than just a closer relationship? Do you think stuff is done too much behind closed doors, maybe?
Oh, undoubtedly, absolutely undoubtedly. When you consider the plans that emerged for the growth of the university, I'm actually in somewhat of a privileged position. I work within the admissions office, and I saw the email that went around at least a month before it was announced to the students.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time, but thanks for that, Alex. Thank you. Tawanda, in your manifesto, you say you want to take the Students' Union in a new direction. What do you actually mean by that?
I think a lot of people are very out of touch. That's why I'm running, because I wasn't involved in the union, and the union didn't get involved with me as a student last year. So I think that one of the moves I'll take to take the union in a new direction will be switching the emphasis from national to local campaigns. That's not to say we're going to scrap national campaigns, but that's going to say we're going to drive a lot more local than national. That's one of the key points. But also giving students a chance to vote online in referendums on issues that perhaps they haven't had an opportunity to talk about or even think about. A lot of students didn't know about the Israeli product ban or Coca-Cola ban on campus. And obviously, whether we're for it or against, students should have the chance to vote on on such policy.
And why do you think, you said you didn't get engaged, with the Students' Union at first. What's stopping students, do you think, in your view? Some students, anyway.
Well, I think that a lot of students feel as though the union is perhaps fitting into one agenda. I think a lot of students also don't feel part of the union because there's not much accessibility. The members' meetings, we don't know when those happen. I think there have been strides to increase online sort of involvement, but I think online referendums and real emphasis on social media could help us.
And you mentioned some of big union policies in there, like the ban on Coca-Cola being sold in Students' Union outlets.
Yes.
Do you think they should go back to the members? The members should vote on them again? What do you think, those policies need to be voted on? What do you mean by bringing those up?
I think we need a referendum, and we need a referendum with as many students as possible. So not necessarily those students who will turn up to wherever it's decided on, but students online. I think that we need to go back to previous policies. I don't think we should have a short-term memory about these decisions.
And do you think there's a willingness in students to vote on those big issues online? Do you think it would get a high turnout of Sussex students?
I do think it would get a high turnout, and I think even if we thought that perhaps it may not get a high turnout, we should still attempt it, because it's important that students get to decide on what's sold in their campus bars and shops.
I mean, with 400 students last term turned up to an emergency members meeting. Do you not see them as a good way of democracy?
No, that's not enough. Not at all.
Online for you is the future, even if you can get 400 students come into a room.
I think you could get far more than 400 students online, and that is not enough for a university that's seeking to expand its numbers to 20,000 possibly. 400 is not enough. No.
We're out of time, but thank you very much for that. Adriano, now in your manifesto you mentioned the proposal of setting up school-wide assemblies for students. In the era of kind of social media and lots of things being done online, do you think there's a willingness for students to attend such events?
Oh, definitely. I mean, one of the problems, having sat on university council now, student union council now for almost a year, and a union executive, I've noticed underrepresentation of the sciences as well as of international students. And school-wide assemblies are a way for students to engage on academic matters concerning their schools and discuss with other like-minded students, and that would be an incredible way of feeding it into the students' union and the student rep scheme and bringing it all back together and making it as grassroots as possible.
Do you think there is the demand for people to actually turn up in person to those kind of events?
Definitely. I mean, events such as the members meeting, events such as the occupation in Bramber House shows that things are changing at Sussex, and people are more willing to engage with other students on issues that affect them, whatever that may be.
Now, when people see in your manifesto, the word school assembly, it might conjure up images of, the headmaster at the front. I mean, do you see this as a university joint event with the heads of school and academics, or is it a student?
A student-led event. Okay. So I, of course, I mean, I wouldn't urge academics not to attend, but they should be led primarily by students for students. So university representatives would not be there, and it would be, an event for students, by students, with the input of the students' union to, feed it in and make it as democratic as possible, because I think we need a wider participation among students within the students' union.
And it's been discussed a lot tonight, not just in this debate, but in the other candidates, about, the move to online. Do you see that working in conjunction with some form of online democracy, or do you still see the value?
I think there's an incredible value in in-person democracy, because I think there's a tendency with, the internetification of our society that we, forget the interrelation between people and the importance of, engaging people and being able to react straight away to what someone says to you, and that way, furthering your knowledge instantly in person, and it's got a different impact on your mind and your learning capacity.
So there wouldn't be an end to members' meetings if you were elected president?
Definitely not.
Okay, Adriano, we're out of time, I'm afraid, but thank you for that. Now, as I said, there are 6 candidates in total running to be Students' Union president, so we've got another 2 candidates coming up, and one, I'm afraid, can't be here tonight. So let's hear the videos of the next 2 candidates.
Hi, my name's Kelly. I'm your current president and I'm running to be your president again next year. If elected, I'll be seeking funding increases and development for sports, activities, events and advice services in the union. I'll be hoping to maintain financial independence and student employment. I'm hoping to develop clearer input mechanisms for students to ensure that they can all have their say in the way that the union is run, so that it's best placed to represent them when the university is imposing changes. I will also work to ensure Sussex has a pivotal role in defending education nationally and coordinate inspiring national and local campaigns to this effect. So please, re-elect me as your president to continue the work we've already started this year and to implement new initiatives which will ultimately make student lives better.
Hi, my name's Abraham. If you elect me your union president, I will work to provide cheaper transport between town and campus. I'll defend the uni's provision of affordable housing. I'll introduce a late night food venue on campus, and I'll campaign against exploitive landlords and unpaid internships both in Brighton and in the rest of the UK. Thank you.
Now, just before we hear from the next two candidates for president that you just saw there, loads more tweets coming in. Remember, the hashtag is Sussex Elections, all of tonight and all this week. Kieran Byrne says 3 fantastic candidates for welfare officer this year. Obviously, Kieran won't know who to vote for because 3 great candidates there. And another tweet from Bill saying, hashtag Sussex Elections are beating the technical gremlins. Go Sussex UniTV for broadcasting live on the web. Great stuff. But he says candidates argue more. I'm not suggesting that, that's just on Twitter, so don't break any election rules, candidates. Now, first of all, the same question that I asked to the other presidential candidates, to you two, Abraham and Kelly. Do occupations actually achieve anything? They've been very topical in the news, but do they actually achieve anything? Abraham first.
Well, I think we're talking about one occupation in particular, and that's the occupation at the top of Bramber House. Now, I think occupations can achieve things, no doubt. For me, the acid test will be whether this occupation achieves I think one of its main aims, which is raising awareness of the outsourcing reforms which have been pushed through without due student consultation. And if that's successful in raising awareness, then I'm all for it. But up to the point when that ceases to achieve that, I would say that maybe it's time to look at other forms of negotiation.
So it's not necessarily, an end. Negotiation is still required in your view.
Well, I'm president of the debating society, and I think, as you know, we're nothing without dialogue. We can't really move things forward. So yeah, I think if you close off avenues of discussion, then I'm not sure how anything would progress.
Kelly, obviously occupations do divide opinion. What's your stance on them? Can they achieve something?
Very topical question, of course. Yes, I do think that they can achieve something, and Occupation Action has a varied history of success here at Sussex. I certainly think it's important that the Students' Union should support student-led campaigning on campus, peaceful actions on campus, and support peaceful actions against stuff that could potentially have a negative impact on our wider community here. Now, whether or not this current occupation will actually achieve its aims to halt the plans for the university to undertake full and proper consultation is yet to be seen, but we can be sure that it has achieved a few things. Firstly, it's certainly achieved increased media coverage, and that's something that the campaign is trying to get for months now, but this occupation has really spurred that on and given it momentum. It's certainly achieved bringing the issue to local, national and even international attention now, and it's garnering support from all quarters now. It's also raised student awareness here on campus, and I think it's safe to say that there are literally hundreds more students now actively involved in the campaign. And certainly I spoke to quite a few students that went along to the Q&A session with management last week who had never been involved in a campaign, didn't really know anything about the issue, just went along because of the occupation, and they've gone from being completely apathetic on the issue from wanting to really get involved.
So you can raise awareness. I think all the people present have agreed on that, but not necessarily change anything in terms of what they want to achieve. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's not what I'm saying. I think this has kind of made management think a lot about what's going on. I don't think they've really responded to it yet, but they're certainly thinking about it.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time on that one, Kelly. Sorry, but thank you. The next question is on each candidate's manifesto. Kelly, staying with you, you say in your manifesto that you think the union needs to be independent and effective. What do you mean by those words in terms of independence and effectiveness?
I think financial independence is quite important to the Students' Union. We really need to find a way to secure that. I think at the moment university it's been talking about potentially outsourcing our commercial services and stuff like that. I think it's really important that we find ways to protect them and that we engage with dialogue and set down kind of what we want for the future and set down our plans and talk about all our finances.
Is it hard, do you think, to have that financial independence?
No, I certainly think that it is hard. I mean, we now have a set agreement with the university that they fund us £60 for every student. That's going to be set for at least another 2 years. It's great we have that in place, but certainly the operations candidates before talked a lot about our commercial services and maintaining that kind of independence, and of course that is a revenue stream for the Students' Union, and all that money goes back into student-led activity. So I'm very much up for protecting our commercial services, as I've said in our manifesto.
And what about that effectiveness word? How is the union how can the union be effective?
What in its?
I mean, in your manifesto, you also mentioned that the union needs to be effective.
Oh right, I meant that in its representation and its representational functions. Recently, I took a proposal to management for how it should consult with the student body and how it should consult with the Students' Union. And I don't think a student union can be effective if it's really got those proper channels set down and agreed with management to represent the student body.
Okay, I'm afraid we're out of time, but
That's
thank you for that, Kelly. Abraham, now you say in your manifesto that rising fees mean that students are expecting more for their money. Do you think, therefore, that we should treat students like customers?
No, I disagree. I disagree with that entirely. I think that in many ways, as a nation, we're losing sight of education as something to be valued for its own sake. I think, however, that does not mean by any stretch of the imagination that students are coming to university in the current first years and are saying, look, I'm paying £9,000 a year that I'm going to have to pay back with interest. Where's my money going? I don't think that necessarily means we view it in a more commercial sense, but I would stand by that statement and say that students are expecting more from the university and indeed from the union.
And do you think that's a problem, that they're demanding, they're expecting more as the fees increase?
No, I don't think so. I think that students are right to increase their expectations of what the university should deliver. I think that Sussex should deliver more, and hopefully we'll go, move into the future and do that.
And what do you think you need to change if you were Students' Union president, to meet those demands of students?
Well, one of my manifesto promises is that no lecture would be cancelled without it being rescheduled. I think that's an issue that people have spoken to me about. They've said, look, we don't like it, particularly not when if you actually do the mathematics and work out how much each lecture costs in terms of pounds per hour, it's an enormous amount. They don't like it when these lectures are cut or seminars when are cut and not rescheduled. So that's one thing I do in terms of education. But I think students expect more from their university than purely academic things, which is why I would work to open a fast food establishment on campus, which is why I'd work to provide cheaper transport between town and uni, and why I would looking at societies, and I mean,
they seem very practical things. It's lectures, it's fast food, it's bus and travel. Do you think what students want?
I think that's what matters to students. Like, it's all very well making sort of vague manifesto promises to increase, openness or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, if you can sort of present tangible improvements and say, look, this is how it's better, I think that's what students want.
Okay, thank you, Abraham. We're out of time, I'm afraid. There are 6 candidates in total running for president. 5 of them were here tonight. Also running is Shadman Ahmed. If you want to find out more about his manifesto and all the candidates who've appeared tonight, please go to our website, sussexstudent.com/elections. Now, voting is open from Monday at 9 a.m, as I've been saying all night, and closes on Friday at 5 p.m. But how do you go about voting online? We've got a short video now to show you how. Voting in the Student Union elections is quick and easy. All you have to do is go to sussexstudent.com/vote and log in with your Sussex username and password. You can log in at any time during the voting week to vote for all the candidates. Here you'll see all the positions that we're electing in this set of elections. For this test, we'll be voting for President Cat. Just click on Vote Now to see all the candidates. On this page, you'll see all the candidates and their manifestos and photos. Once you've read the manifestos, scroll to the bottom to vote. We use the alternative vote system, so you rank the candidates in the order of preference, starting with your first preference. You don't have to click all the preference boxes, and you can reopen nominations if you'd rather the elections were rerun in that category. If you want to register that you don't want to vote for any candidate in this position, or to reopen nominations, click Spoil Vote. Once you've selected your preferences, click Submit Vote. This will take you back to the screen with all the positions. You can log out now and log back in at any time during the voting week, or you can vote for the other positions. It's as easy as that. Now, lots of you are still getting involved on Twitter. Lots of the candidates who've been here tonight have been using the Sussex election hashtag, saying how much they enjoyed it. So thank you to all the candidates who came. My dad's tweeted as well, saying, well done, son. Rather embarrassing. Thank you, Dad. Thanks to all the candidates who came. I hope it's allowed you to make a more informed choice about who you'll vote for next week between Monday at 9 a.m. and Friday at 5 p.m. online, sussexstudent.com/vote. A big thank you to all the team here at UniTV, behind the camera, in the production team, who've been working behind the scenes and in the run-up to this event. A big thank you to all of you who've made this possible, especially Cal, Will and Ryan on the exec of UniTV. And a big thanks to Chris Effner as well at Media, Film and Music here at the university. From the Students' Union, big thank you to Nick Jordan, our IT man, who's got it playing in Falmer Bar and East Slope Bar, and also to our returning officer, Gabriel Webber, as well. I hope you will all vote who've been watching tonight. If you're a Sussex or BSMS student, you can vote all next week. So please use your vote, because it's so important that as many students as possible vote in these elections if the Students' Union is to remain a truly representative organisation here at Sussex, working in the best interests of Sussex students. But from me, Kit Bradshaw, and all the team here, that's the end of Candidate Question Time. Good night.